Hello everyone, welcome back to my knitting show and tell, because that's really what this is, isn't it? A knitting show and tell. My name's Adriana. I'm a knitter living on the east coast of Canada, and I have a few finished objects to share with you today and a couple new and exciting to me works in progress to talk about. I started off the month by making 3 pairs of fingerless gloves. My sister and my cousin both work in offices and they're quite cold this time of year. So they were talking about how their hands are so cold, like typing and whatever. So I made 2 pairs of fingerless gloves, one for each of them, and then I made a 3rd pair for myself. I'll go just in chronological order of how I made them. Oh, I only have 1 pair to show you. The other 2 I'll just have to put up pictures because I've given them away. So the first pair, the pair I made for my sister, I followed the pattern called Creme by Emily Louis. It's a free pattern, and I used a combination of a wool plus a baby Surrey alpaca and silk yarn. Those 2 held together and it made a really soft, fuzzy fabric. This pattern is just like a really basic fingerless glove, ribbing for the cuff, and then just stockinette for the hand part, and then ribbing around the 4 fingers. I quite liked this pattern. I liked that there were a couple different options for gauges, that if you weren't getting the exact gauge for one version of the pattern, you might be able to make it work for the other version of the pattern. So there's options there. I did mess up with the increases for the thumb the first time I knit it, and I did it so that you could see the increase line like along here, like you could see the thumb coming off, whereas the pattern actually wants you to do it so the increases are all along the edge, so you don't see any increase line. So I did knit 1 version of this fingerless glove, like just one of them, and there was a few things I didn't like, that I didn't do the increases correctly and you could see the increase line, and I made the ribbing too long and it was just a little bit too big. So I ripped it all back out, knit a smaller size, did less ribbing, and I really like how they turned out. I have a thing with fingerless gloves. I feel like they all just kind of look a little bit like a cast, like you broke your wrist and are wearing a cast now. So it's hard not to think of that when you're wearing a fingerless glove. But I really like how these turned out. I don't think they look super cast-like. And yeah, my sister likes them, so that's good. The next pair I made was actually the pair for myself, but I used the same pattern that I used for my cousin's pair that is coming up next. I think actually I'm just going to talk about both of these at the same time because I used the same pattern. I used basically the same yarn. So I did that same mix of using a strand of undyed wool and a strand of baby Surrey alpaca and silk to get that really fuzzy, soft fabric. By the way, I don't know the brand of the Surrey. The tag didn't have any information on the brand of the yarn. The wool is from Old School Acres, the yarn that's local to me. And for my pair, this pair, I used a fingering weight strand, and then for my cousin's pair I used a sport weight strand and a little bit bigger of a needle size to account for the different yarn weights. But anyway, this is another free pattern and it's called Arctic Blast Mitts. It's a pattern by Star Athena, and it's this beautiful arrowhead lace pattern all along the gloves, and then a 2x1 rib on just like the very edge of the cuff, and then up at near the fingers. I think this looks so beautiful. I think the lace helps take it back from looking like a cast and looking like fingerless gloves. So I love how these look. They're very soft. and very comfortable. I wasn't sure if maybe it would feel a little prickly, like the loose fibers from the alpaca I wasn't sure if it would make it feel kind of prickly, but they're very soft. I've worn them a few times out like doing errands and stuff, and I really love them. I did make on my first one, I was doing all of the, or one of the decreases in the lace pattern repeat. I was doing one of the decreases wrong, and I did the pattern repeat probably like 6 times before I realized, and I was debating like ripping it all back and starting over, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to finish it. I'm going to finish like the one that I was working on, and then I'll finish the second one. And if you can really see a difference, then I'll go back to the first one, rip it all out and do it again. I also thought, since it's like the first 6 rounds or whatever, that's probably going to be covered by whatever sleeve I'm wearing, right? So I decided to just keep going, and I'm glad I did, because I can't really see a difference. So I don't even know if it's worth showing here, but the decrease here, I think I did a knit 2 together instead of a SSK, and that just made it so the V and the arrow didn't look totally like a V. It's more like you can see the line coming up, but this stitch here, instead of angling out like that, it's going up from the stitch below it. It's fine. I don't notice it at all, and it wasn't worth taking it out and starting over. So yeah, so these are my first pair of Arctic Blast mitts. I feel like there was another mistake that I made in my first pair, but I don't remember what it was. Oh, I think maybe just that I would have made the thumb a little bit shorter. I tried going for like getting it like totally over my thumb knuckle, because I was like, I want to have some dexterity still in my thumb, and I thought either it has to be like below my knuckle or like way after it so it's easy to bend, and it kind of hits like just after, and it's not as easy to bend. On the second pair I made it a bit shorter, and that pair I think is a little more comfortable, and it makes it still easy to use your hands, like if you're typing or something. So I'm glad I did that on the second pair, like the one for my cousin, because she will be wearing them in her cold office where she's typing, right? So if it's really an issue and bugging me, I can just take out a couple rounds and then bind off again, but I haven't worn them enough to like really notice it and decide if it's actually an issue. So yeah, that's the Arctic Blast mitts, a really nice pattern. I enjoyed it. Is there just one size? So there is only one size. I think you could modify this, like if you need it to be bigger or smaller based on your like wrist and hand circumference. You could probably just use a different yarn weight and different size needles to make a bigger or smaller size depending on what you want. I don't know how it would work with like adding in a whole other like pattern repeat. I think it's a 6 stitch for like this arrowhead pattern, the lace. So yeah, maybe you could add in a whole other like extra 6 stitches and just add that in. That could work. I think it would also work to just like, if you want it to be bigger, use a thicker yarn and bigger needles to make a larger size. So those were my 3 finished objects from the month. I did also do some knitwear care and did a lot of sock mending this month. I'll just quickly show you. This is my first time trying to patch holes that showed up in my socks. You can tell where I carry my weight on my feet, all in the heels. It's all in the heels. This was a really fun project for me. I learned a new skill. I just did a knitted patch. So I picked up stitches from below the hole knit a patch over top of the hole while picking up stitches on each side of the hole, and then Kitchener stitched it closed after I had like completely covered the hole. And yeah, it was fun. I'm really glad to be using these socks again. I was trying to be a little more bold with my color combinations and decided to do a bright orange for these brown socks, which I thought was like a really fun, cool color combination to do. And as I was working my last patch of it, because I only had one patch on this pair of socks for me, but I had 3 on my husband's pair to do with the same brown yarn. And as I was working on the last patch, I was like, oh, this is really giving Reese's Peanut Butter Cup vibes, this color combination. So subconscious color choice there, I guess. Color combinations are tricky to figure out, and I'll keep working on it. I'm glad that it was just a patch and not like a whole sweater or something, that it's like, oh, okay, that's your Reese's Peanut Butter Cup sweater. And then this one I just did, so I just did a green yarn in, I think it's the same brand and like fiber content, like it's a wool nylon blend. And I thought this was like, yeah, this is a nice color combination, right? Gray and like this green. I was wearing these after I patched them, and my sister came over and I like lifted up my sock to show her like, hey, look what I did. And she was like, did you step in Play-Doh? I can't unsee it now. It just looks like I stepped in Play-Doh. It's fine. I'll get better with color combinations, and I really enjoyed learning a new skill. I'm glad to have these socks back in the sock rotation before winter's done, and I think I'll probably actually have to be patching these again because I already see this is starting to really get thin, the fabric. The thing that I learned from this too is I just need to knit socks on like with a tighter gauge on smaller needles, because I think I did these socks, I feel like it was on 3mm needles, which is crazy now that I've done a few pairs of socks. And I think this was probably also a 3mm needle, or maybe a 2.75, I'm not sure. But yeah, the socks that I've knit on larger needles, those are the ones that I'm having to mend. So yes, if you're doing hand knit socks using like the smaller the needle, the better. Let's talk about my works in progress. I started 2 new projects this month that I'm pretty excited about. Let's start with this one, because this is the one that, okay, I'm really excited about it, but I'm also like, I don't know. I'll talk about it. So this is my first ever, I think this is called stranded color work, where you're using 2 different colors at the same time, like in one row, maybe you'll knit 2 of the white and then 1 of the blue and then 2 more white and then 1 blue. So I'm pretty sure this is what you would call stranded color work. This is the start of the LV slippers. Pretty sure that's how you say it. It's a pattern from the 52 Weeks of Socks book. I'm knitting this with Briggs & Little Regal 2-ply yarn. This is just the white is just like undyed, I think it's maybe called washed white, and then the blue is navy blue, the name of the color. I'm enjoying it so far. I made a swatch doing the Colourwork flat. The pattern says to use 3.25mm needles. I started using 3.25mm needles, and then as I was doing the swatch, I do just like a couple rows of garter to like have a border around the swatch. And I did the garter rows and I was like, oh, this is going to be way bigger than 4 inches or 10 centimeters. I need to go down a needle size for sure. So I went down to, I think, 2.75 millimeter needle and started the garter section again. I was like, this is looking a lot better. Then I started doing the Colourwork section. And I was like, oh yeah, I've heard people saying go up a needle size when you're doing Colourwork because it's so tight. Like it really tightens up your stitches and your gauge. And so yeah, I finished the swatch just with the 2.75 millimeter needles. I also used it as an opportunity to like learn how to do stranded Colourwork. That in itself was a whole learning curve. I learned about color dominance, yarn dominance. I tried a couple different methods for like yarn management for like actually how you're doing the knitting part of stranded Colourwork. And yeah, my hands hurt after the first couple tries, but I think I found a good rhythm now with it, and I'm liking how it's looking. But anyway, back to the swatch. Finished the swatch, I blocked it. It was too small. I didn't hit gauge, so I was like, you know what, I'll just go back up to the 3.25 millimeter size that the pattern recommends. And I started knitting with it. I had to rip it out once because I made a mistake right at the very beginning. Started knitting it again. Got to like where you're done doing the increases along the side here, and then measured to see where I was at. And the width of this slipper is exactly 4 inches, which means I am about 2 stitches off gauge. It should be just bigger than 4 inches. I don't think it's enough to rip it out. Usually if I'm off gauge a little bit, I'm like, okay, well, it'll block out. If it stretches a bit, that's fine. But with this, like with Colourwork, you don't want it to like stretch because then you can see the yarn behind it and it just doesn't look as neat. So I have this on pause for right now for that reason. Like just being that little bit off gauge is making me uncertain on whether or not this is going to turn out well. The other thing is this is so stiff. Like it's very stiff. The fabric is very dense. The knitting is very tight. And that's also making me think that maybe I should have done a bigger needle size. I'm really liking how the pattern's looking. Like I said, I learned about yarn dominance. I think that's the term, yarn dominance or color dominance maybe. And as you can see down here, like at this first pattern repeat, I was looking at it and I thought I was doing the yarn or color dominance thing correctly. Like they said to have your background color held in your left hand and then the one that you want to like pop and like show the pattern in your right hand. And I thought I was doing that correctly. But after the first couple of repeats, I was like, okay, this isn't looking like the pattern photos. The pattern photos looked more like a really defined shape here, like where it's kind of all connected. So I switched up my technique a bit and you can see up here, it looks a lot better. Like you can, I don't know what shape this is, but it's a clearly defined shape that's like touching everywhere versus down here, the white is coming through more than the blue versus up here. It's looking a lot better. That was another thing that I was like, should I rip it out? Because this, like the first few pattern repeats they don't look the same as the rest, but this pattern starts at the heel. So this is your heel here. You knit, and then this, I have, you can see a line of gray. That's some scrap yarn that I'm gonna take out, and then you knit your like foot opening there. So this part is going to be on the ground all the time, and then this part is on the back of the heel. So I'm like, those couple pattern repeats where the color dominance wasn't exactly what it should be, you're not going to see those. It's on the bottom of the foot and the back of your heel. So I decided to just go with it. And now that I'm picking this up again, I'm like, I'm pretty close to being done it. I just need to finish it and then, wash and block it, see how it fits on my foot, and then if it is too small, like if my gauge was off, even though it's off by such a little amount, I don't know. It's my first color, like proper color work thing that I'm like, I don't know, maybe that makes a big difference in the final like finished project. So I think I'll finish this one, wash block it, see how it fits. And if it is too snug, or like if it's really stretching, like that doesn't look nice, right? To have this color work all stretched out, like you want it to look like that. Anyway, I also was glad I did a swatch, because then I could test to see if the color would bleed at all. I didn't have any issues with that. I did learn continental knitting for this project, because I tried doing both yarns English style, like just flipping back and forth. But that was going so slow, and it was so fiddly, switching between yarns with the same hand. So I was like, this is my time to learn how to do continental knitting. It feels so weird, and I'm still having issues like getting the tensioning right, like holding the yarn. I'm still having some trouble with that, but I think it's looking pretty good, and the more I do it, the easier it gets. So yeah, it's really fun. I can see how color work can be addicting. This does take a lot of my brain power. Like I need to be focused, like locked in. Like this is what I'm focusing on when I'm working on this. Oh, and this isn't even for me. This is going to be a birthday gift for my mom next month. So this does have a deadline. I can't just keep it off to the side because I'm not sure about my gauge. I have to actually do something with it. I think these slippers are so beautiful, and I think this was a good first color work project for me. Slippers, something not too big, and something that has like a repeated pattern that I can kind of like get used to. I don't have to catch any floats, and yeah, enjoying this so far. And then my second and final work in progress for this month is the start of a Chima skirt. This is a pattern by Eggyo Knit. It's my first Eggyo Knit pattern, and I guess I should be holding it like this because this is the top here. The Chima skirt is a, I don't know, would you call it a wrap skirt? Like you wrap it around and tie it, and it looks so long. That's the thing that's I'm a little concerned about right now, is that it looks so incredibly long, but you are like it folds over itself. And I've taken measurements, and I do seem to be on gauge. So I'll keep going with it. It's a broken rib texture that's going on, and you knit it from the top down. At the end, you make a long I-cord, attach it to the top, I-cord all along the top, make an I-cord like continuing off, and then you use that to tie around yourself. And of course the I-cord will give it some more stability, because right now you can stretch it like so much. I think that's my problem, is that I'm like, okay, this is like stretching around me, but I'm like, that's, you don't want the fabric to be stretched out like this. You want it to sit like this. So I think the I-cord will help kind of lock it in place instead of having the extra stretch from the cast on edge. Looking at the pattern, like looking at the photos, you might think it's just like one big rectangle, but there is a lot of shaping happening. There's some short rows in the very beginning, and there's increases and decreases to get the shape that you see in the pattern sample photos, which is nice, because if it was just a big broken rib rectangle, it would take forever, because it's just, well, it's a lot of stitches. So I'm at the point now where I'm doing some increases here. And that's really keeping me motivated. Like, okay, I'll do a couple more rows because then I can do another increase. And I'm at the end of my increases actually. So I have decreases left to do, but they're less frequent. You have to do a lot more rows in between the decreases. That's going to take me some time to get to each decrease. So yeah. Oh, the yarn. The yarn is 2 strands of Briggs & Little Sport in the color 14 Sheep's Gray. It's just undyed. What drew me to this pattern, I saw the pattern on Instagram, and of course, I just really liked how it looked. And then the yarn that she used for it was 2 strands of sport weight yarn, which you don't see too often. Like, sport weight projects aren't as common as fingering weight or DK weight projects. So I was like, oh, I feel like this would be a really good yarn for a skirt. Like, it's going to be really sturdy and durable, which I think is good for a skirt. I'm not really a skirt person, but I really like the look of this skirt, and I was like, I could become a skirt person. If I made it myself, I might wear it, right? We'll see. I was excited about this because I got to use my fixed Xiaogu circular needles that I found at the thrift store. Their size 4.5 millimeter, and I'm like, when am I going to use like this long of a cord, unless it's for like a blanket or like a huge shawl or a huge scarf or something. And when I did my swatch for this, it was pretty clear that I needed to increase my needle size a bit. And I was like, wait, I have the perfect needle for this. So yes, I finally got to use my super long fixed 4.5 millimeter needles for a project. And it's nice because it's long enough that I can extend it the whole way. I can like wrap it around myself to see how it fits. Like, I'm not like bunching the stitches. And even though I could use cord extenders to make like a super long cord, I feel like those get caught, like the stitches get caught on it. So it doesn't just go as smoothly, the knitting process. So yeah, this is what I'm knitting on these days. I don't have any acquisitions besides I bought the yarn for the skirt, and I had the navy yarn for the slippers, but I bought the white yarn for it. So I don't have any other acquisitions other than that. Thanks so much for hanging out and listening to me talk about my knit projects. Let me know what you're working on, and I hope you're having a good end of winter, start to spring. We're just about to tap our maple trees because the temperature is right for maple syrup season. The end of winter is close. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.